Okay, guys. So one thing to note is that so there's this just about this specific repo. So there's the annotated branch. That's what I'm in right now. And if you look at this, this is like, well, 118 lines long. There is a lot of stuff going on in here. Um, but if you check out to the master branch, check out master. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing. If you go back to the master branch, it is 61 lines long, so it is considerably shorter. This does the exact same stuff. If I go back here, it is the exact same app, does all of the exact same things. The difference is that this has pretty much nothing in the console, so there's just nothing that gets console locked. So if you're looking for something to incorporate into your project or whatever from this class, I would use the master branch. And the master branch is what you are much more likely to actually use in production without all the console logging blah going on in it. So I would use this. The annotated branch is just there to explain what's going on at each step in the process. And yeah, this is what your app would normally look like, or at least it would look more like this. The other thing is, again, this doesn't actually save anything to the database. And so, excuse me, saving stuff to the database, that's what you're going to be doing in later on in this class, is working on making something that persists beyond just when you have to restart the app the next time. The last thing I want to talk about is just this whole security thing in general. So Passport adds a lot of security to your app. It's not completely infallible. Does anyone know what percentage of apps on the market are 100% secure? Exactly. 0% of apps are 100% secure. There will never be an app that exists that is 100% secure. Security is just a fancy way of saying making it annoying for hackers to try to get into your app. That's really it. It's just making stuff inconvenient. Like it's really just making stuff inconvenient. So the likelihood of your app or whatever getting hacked is sort of represented by this really fancy equation right here. Energy divided by profit. That is the amount of energy a hacker perceives they would have to put into hacking your app, and the amount of profit they perceive they would get out of it. So for something like this app that we made right here, the super simple Twitter app that does literally nothing, there is literally no profit to be gained from it. Well, okay, they would have some access to your Twitter account and everything, but still, that's a pretty low amount of profit. And so any amount of energy you put into trying to secure this thing is going to make them disinterested in your app. That's because there are hundreds of thousands of apps out there that are less secure than most of the things that you will ever need. And those things are a much more likely target for hackers because there's just much less energy that they have to put into it. And so when you're making an app, even if you do like, just a password field that is completely front end, it just uses front end JavaScript and is completely insecure, even that still adds a layer of inconvenience to your app that's going to deter someone from wanting to hack it versus someone else's app somewhere else. I mean, even a tiny little bit of energy, like I know how lazy I am, even if something just requires a little bit more energy for me, I'm going to do the other thing. And hackers are the exact same way. They're people too. Similarly, if you have if you're writing software for a bank or something, then that ratio completely changes. And so the amount of profit that can come out of that is considerable. So you need to boost the amount of inconveniences into that as well to sort of mitigate that amount. But people are always really concerned about all of the apps that they make over the course of this class. Like, are people going to hack into my account and everything? Unless you're using something that you're actually paying for, you probably don't need to worry about it too much. So if you're using Amazon AWS, which you usually do have to pay for, then yeah, I would worry about that. But like Twitter keys and everything, still absolutely be cautious about it. But when you're making a project or making an app or something, don't feel like you have to completely batten down the hatches like in every way possible. You don't have to make it ironclad. Only if you're doing really sensitive stuff with financial data do you really need to worry about it. So I say that to say don't let like this fear of being hacked keep you from innovating. Don't let the fear of being hacked keep you from innovating.
It's the same thing I tell people who want to invent stuff. Don't worry, don't let the fear of patent infringement keep you from innovating stuff, or else you'll just never make anything. The odds of someone actually stealing your idea is pretty small until you have something that already has a bunch of market traction behind it. When it's something that no one knows about, the odds are very good that it's never in any danger at all. Any questions about that? All the security stuff? Cool. So that's really pretty much it for what I want to talk about over the course of this class. The rest of the time, I would like you guys to work on implementing Twitter. Oh, sorry. I forgot one thing. And that's the difference between 127 and localhost, between this thing and localhost. They both refer to the same server. If I go to localhost 3000, I get the exact same thing as if I go to 127 3000. These are the same thing. But notice there's a difference here. On 127, I am logged in. On localhost 3000, I am not. That's because Chrome considers those to be completely different websites. As such, they have completely different cookies. And so my server thinks that they're different websites, so they have different sessions. That's why you always have to use 127 when you're using this app. So probably everyone in here is going to run into some kind of a problem caused by using localhost when you should actually be using 127. While you're working on the app in this class, just use 127. Again, they're the exact same thing. Yeah? Well, so it's also because Twitter won't send OAuth tokens to localhost. It'll only send OAuth tokens to actual IP addresses. And so 127 is always going to be localhost on any server you use anywhere. But for some reason, Twitter is like kosher with 127, and it's not with localhost. I'm not really sure why. But that's why you need to use 127. Depends on what you're doing with it. If you want to use like Twitter authentication and everything, then probably. But another thing to consider is that when you deploy it to production, you're not going to be using IP addresses anymore. When you deploy it to production, you're going to be using something like, mydankapp.herokuapp.com or something. You're not going to be using an IP address. Anything else? Cool. So the rest of this lesson plan is just a whole bunch of you doing. You can see it on here. This you do implement Twitter login. And yeah, I'd really just like you guys to walk through this part of the lesson plan. Just walk through the end of it. And it ends up, if you get done, then try to implement Facebook as well. But this is really important. It's not going to work if you use the exact same env.js that you did before. This one is a little bit different. You can use the same consumer key, consumer secret, but this one just looks a little bit different. So don't just copy it over. Actually rewrite it like this. Again, you can still use the same key and secret that you have from apps.twitter.com. You don't have to make a new Twitter app. But the env.js just looks a little bit different. I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, big things to watch out for. Or at least in the last class, the biggest pitfalls were env.js not being right. Mongod has to be running, because this actually does save stuff to the database. And you've got to use 127, not localhost. And it can't just be 127, it's got to be 127, 3000. You can't forget that 3000 at the end. I think that was pretty much it. So, any questions about what you guys are working on? So yeah, the rest of the class is pretty much yours. I might like yell how things are going at like 4:30 or something, but that's pretty much it. So I'll just be floating around. Feel free to pick my brain and do whatever. If someone has a really interesting point, then I'll talk about it with the whole class. Cool? Cool? Cool.